Alright guys, let's get done with this. We need to unit test the has completed lesson method and then we're going to create it. Okay, so head over to my user test. So test can check if user has completed lesson. So we want to pass a lesson into the has completed lesson method and it should return to us true or false. If the user has completed the lesson, true. If the user has not completed the lesson, false. So how are we going to make this test? We need a user and then we need a series which has lessons, and then for our action we are going to complete a lesson, and then for our assertions would assert that the has completed lesson method returns true for the completed lesson and maybe false for an uncompleted lesson. Okay, so create a user. We can copy that from here, and by the way, we're using Redis, right? So we're gonna flush Redis. So this flush Redis, create a user, create a lesson, create another lesson in that series. So I'll copy that and this will take care of this both steps. So we flush Redis, create a user, create a lesson, create another lesson in that series, which is lesson 2, and then for us to complete that lesson we'll just call user complete lesson, and we're only going to be completing lesson 1. Then for our assertions would say this assert true that user has completed lesson, and we'll pass in lesson 1 and would say this should be true, right? And then we'll do exactly the same assertion but for false. So for lesson 2 we would say assert false. So this method should return to us false if this user has not completed the lesson, and return true if the user has completed it. Okay, that's our test. Let's run it. PHP unit, and we'll filter to this test. Okay, we have our error call to undefined has completed lesson method. We have our learning trait or entity and we are going to work with it. So I'll create public function has completed lesson, and this method is expecting lesson. Run it again, and we have failed asserting that null is true because this is expecting that we return a boolean, but now it's returning null. So how do we want to check if a user has completed a lesson? We have a list of all the lessons that have been completed for a particular series right here. There's a method that does that for us right here. Get completed lessons for a series. So we have the completed lessons for a series and we have the lesson ID that we're trying to cross check. So what we're going to do is return in array, because the method that gives us all the completed lessons actually returns to us an array, right? So return in array, and the first thing we pass is the lesson ID, which is the needle, and then we need to pass the haystack, which is this get completed lessons for a series. Okay, and we need to pass in the series, so we'll say lesson and we'll call series right here to get the series that that lesson belongs to. Okay, so that's how we check if a user has completed a lesson. So remember, this method is returning to us an array of lessons, and it's actually holding the IDs of those lessons, and we can now check if the ID of the lesson that we were passed is in that array. Okay, so let's run our test and we get green, so it's successful. But now remember that we actually created this test right here because we were testing our watch series method, and we were trying to make sure that when we automatically receive a JSON response from the server, this should return true and this should return false. Okay, so let's run this test right now to see if anything changes. PHP unit, and we'll filter to that test. Great, now we have a successful test. Everything seems to be working a-okay.